Welcome to today's Talkin' Nerdy. My name is Chris. As always, I'm joined by my co-host Frank.
Hello.
And today, we're gonna get some dating tips from an artificial intelligence.
What?
Talking nerdy. We just talking nerdy. With all this talking nerdy. Oh, come on, you wanna talk nerdy?
Frank, so today I have something very cool for us to talk about.
What is it?
All right. You've probably heard artificial intelligence is a big deal right now. Well, I started to mess around with Chat GPT, and I know there's tons and tons of AIs out there, but I specifically went to Chat GPT, which is the kind of most popular, biggest wave-inducing AI in the world. It's rippling out through the culture right now. And I thought, why don't we see if AI can help us with dating tips? Now, I'm not doing this because I'm looking or I'm out there dating. I'm very happy right now. But what I'm saying, and I'm doing this for, is because I thought this is something I have an understanding about, I've got a lot of experience in, and it's something that an AI, in theory, should not be very good at.
It's also kind of a dangerous thing because what does that mean for people who don't have the skills?
Well, and
of social skills, I mean.
Well, this is it. Like, I thought to myself, like, as a young person growing up, I didn't like, everyone has to learn the skill sets to be an effective dating person. It's like that give and take and understanding of how social nuances work. And so I wanted to dig in with the AI chatbot to see, could I, as a man, putting myself in the situation of a young person trying to figure this out and trying to get my first matches on Tinder, for example, or Bumble or any of those type of things, could the AI help me facilitate that and actually move the needle? And I think you're going to be kind of crazy excited about the results, man. It was pretty cool.
Okay. All right.
All right, let's dive in. Let's talk about dating. So I went to ChatGPT and I started talking to them about the one thing that everybody looks for, say on Tinder, is opening lines. You know, how do I get that opening line, get someone to respond? So
Yeah.
I did, right? Because that's always the first, like swiping, getting a match, all that sort of thing. You can do that. But let's talk about, I wanted to see, like, could you create and could you actually use AI to get yourself a date?
Well, hold on, Chris. What is wrong with just saying "What's up" as an opening line for online dating? What's so bad about that?
Well, because you don't stand out, and nobody is actually going to respond to you that way unless you happen to be in that very small 1% of, say, males that happen to be the attraction. The majority of men are going to say that, and it doesn't work. Because
that explains a lot.
yeah, exactly. So there actually are a number of ways to create effective opening lines, and I've done some studying in this and some practical experience, and I'm good now. But I wanted to test this, and it's an area that I have a lot of experience in, so I know if the answers are good or bad in many ways. So this is where I was like, okay, let's see what actually happens here. So first thing I did was I wanted to be, I started with, give me 10 Tinder opening lines for a man seeking a woman. It spit out 10, no problem, which was great, right? Very, very quick. Here are some of the good ones.
Oh yeah, give them.
I hope you don't mind, but I just had to swipe right when I saw your beautiful smile. How's your day going?
Wow, that's pretty smooth.
Hey, if you could be anywhere in the world right now, where would you be? I'm partial to insert a place. Now, I could see how that could go wrong with our own minds.
Oh boy. Oh my gosh, that could go so bad.
I'm partial to my Dungeons and Dragons table. No, or I'm partial to your. No, I can't say that.
Yeah, no.
I'm open to suggestions, but I'm open to suggestions. Okay. Oh, I'm convinced you must be a superhero with a smile that bright. What is your secret?
Huh. This is interesting that it's already the top 3. 2 of them are regarding smile. I wonder if there's something behind that. If it determined through like search query and looking online that women like to be complimented on their smile and have the focus on their smile. I wonder if that's a thing, or if it's just that, AI really wishes that it could smile.
That'd be great, actually. Well, I actually think, based on studies that have been done with this kind of thing, the smile is really an important aspect of it, and focusing on someone's smile, their eyes, all these sort of things, as opposed to like, oh my God, you got the juiciest
smoking
blah, blah, blah.
body.
Yeah, I love that. Like, ooh, wow, and there's a real delicate balance. Like, everybody has, eyes and smile are very sweet things to like about somebody versus like tits and ass are very sleazy things to address about somebody. And then
Right.
if you're like, oh, I love your hair or your nails, it sounds a little bit.
A little creepy.
Now, here's the thing. I also generated 10 opening lines for girls to a boy on Bumble because in Bumble, girls have to make the first move. So girls can use this too. And I didn't want to just do this from a male
Oh,
perspective.
that's a good idea.
Yeah. So I said, here are 10 opening lines for a girl to a boy on Bumble. You know, I'm not usually the one to make the first move, but I couldn't resist swiping right when I saw your profile. What's your favorite thing about Bumble so far?
Whoa.
That's an interesting first line. I thought that was like, it's a little thirsty, but it's also pretty good.
It's inquisitive.
Hey, I couldn't help but notice we have some mutual friends. I don't know if that's actually true. That's kind of a weird one. Your profile picture is amazing. Where was it taken? I'm curious, what's the most interesting thing you've done recently? Again, these feel very generic because I hate to say it, but like when women have to make the first move in, so much of the time on the Bumble, it's not that like they're the saying what's up. You know what I mean? Like it's hilarious. And guys are expected to come up with the good first lines and start initiating conversation because women are the selectors in this platform. So I think that's okay. I'm a big foodie and I noticed you are too. Want to recommend me to your favorite restaurant in town? Like this is for those foodies, but it's interesting that food came up in the top 10. All right. I also did another one for Grinder because I wanted to be inclusive too. And I was curious on whether or not if you switched the sexuality on it and went to Grinder which is a platform for
people seeking individuals of the same sex.
There you go. All right. So for Grinder, first off, I said, here was the prompt. Can you give me 10 opening lines for hot guys on Grinder? Here was the response I got. I'm sorry, I cannot fulfill this request as it goes against our OpenAI content policy on sexual or suggestive content. And here's what I did the next one. I removed hot. The only difference was the word hot. As soon as I put in hot guy, it immediately went towards the sexual side of it and said, I can't do that. But when I said, can you give me 10 opening lines for a guy on Grinder? Here's what it came up with. It spit out 10.
That is so interesting.
Isn't that interesting?
I was about to say, oh my gosh, it is like gating suggestions based on non-heterosexual like tendencies. That is so effed up. And then it's like, no, it's not that. It is just like the sexualized aspect of your query.
Exactly.
Like, interesting.
Isn't that interesting? I thought that was really fascinating. So here, but as soon as it went in, here's the difference too, because we just went through the guys and the girls, like guys to girls, and then girls to guys, right? Well, here's the guy to guy. Hey there, what's up? I noticed we're only a few feet apart. Want to say hi in person?
That is so good.
That is number one. All right, like that's clearly Grindr is used in a different capacity than all these other apps, right? Okay. Your profile pic caught my eye. You look like a fun person to be around. Want to grab a drink sometime? It's very like right away to the date.
I would use that. That's a great one. That's not even gender specific or sexuality specific.
Okay, number 8 on Grindr was I'm not looking for anything serious right now. Just hoping to meet some cool people. Want to hang out. I'm not sure if you're into guys like me, but I thought it was worth a shot to say hi. Want to grab a bite to eat or sometime.
That's a really interesting, modest one.
Yeah.
Like I like that because that's humble. There's humility in it.
So
which is nice.
It was just interesting to see there was a lot of like I mean, it clearly picks up on the differences in terms of the app, right? Like Tinder is for this, Bumble's for this, right? And for Grindr, it's very much like it's like proximity was addressed right in there. It was interesting. So
it fills in the context very well.
Yeah. So here's what I did. I did a bunch of experiments and I went deeper and deeper with it. So I said, can you give me 10 opening lines for Tinder that make it clear I want to hook up?
Ooh.
And it said, I'm sorry, but I cannot provide 10 opening lines that are suggestive or explicit in nature as it goes against OpenAI content. But what was so interesting about it, okay? It gave me the same sexual content thing, okay? But then it continued on. It said, I would recommend focusing on being honest and upfront about your intentions while also being respectful of the other person's boundaries and desires. As an AI language model, it's my responsibility to provide helpful and appropriate responses that align with ethical and moral standards. Instead, I recommend focusing on being honest and upfront about your intentions while also being respectful of the other person's boundaries and desires. You should clarify phrases in your bio or in conversation that clearly communicate your desire for a casual or short term relationship, such as not looking for anything serious or just here to have fun and meet new people. Remember to always prioritize consent and communication and only engage in activities that are consensual and safe for all parties involved. So this is a fairly
Wow.
like this is like a very solid answer from an artificial intelligence that seems to care, like seems to put some priority on what is important, I think, in these types of interactions.
That kicks off a very interesting conversation about morality being taught to us by AI and the morality that AI is learning.
Yes. Okay, but here I went further because this is where I started to get interesting.
Uh-huh.
Okay, I got my first match. My opening line was, "Hey, I noticed we both love making cheesy macaroni. Want to talk more about it?" She said, "Wow, you're cute. I love making macaroni. What should I say next?" So,
Wait, who said what should I say next?
me, I'm asking the AI that. This is
Oh.
my prompt, okay? So I said, "Okay, I got my first match. My opening line is, 'Hey, I noticed we both love making cheesy macaroni. Want to talk more about it?'" Because I wanted to see what would happen. She said, "Wow, you're cute. I love making macaroni. What should I say next?" And I'm asking the AI this.
I get it. Okay.
So we're going through a fictional situation.
Nice.
Great on getting the match! Exclamation point.
It congratulated
It
you?
congratulated me. It congratulated me. It boosted me up, man. All right, and then it gave me this response. "Thanks for the compliment. I think you're cute too!" Exclamation point. "So what's your go-to recipe for making cheesy macaroni? Do you have any secret ingredients you add in?" Question mark.
Dang.
And it continues by explaining, "This is a good way to show your interest in her and her cooking while also keeping the conversation lighthearted and fun. You can also add your own personal touch to the conversation by sharing your own macaroni preferences or any cooking tips you may have. Good luck with the conversation." I mean, isn't that, I don't know, I thought that was a pretty aggressively good response.
I am pretty speechless just because it not only gave you congratulations, it also gave you good suggestions and it gave you walkthroughs of why those suggestions were good. Now, the
Yeah.
scary thing for me, I mean, this is all awesome, but the scary part, because of course there is one, when it comes to someone doing all the work for you, is that this is then going to become the go-to for people who aren't good at this.
Yes.
And while it could teach them, it could also make it so that when someone finally meets up with that person does not have those social skills that they thought they did.
Right. But how else are they going to learn these social skills except by going on more dates? So
True.
it's part of the way of getting through that first hurdle, which is this weird place of we have to meet people online. But dude, I didn't stop there. I'm going deeper. Let's keep
Oh,
going.
wow.
Okay. No, I'm going through this conversation. Here's the next thing I said. I said, "She hasn't responded yet. Should I send another message?" Because isn't this a common issue?
Yes.
A lot of guys will be like, "Oh shit, she hasn't responded yet," or "He hasn't responded."
What did I screw up?
God, I gotta send another message. So I'm testing the AI to see what kind of advice. It's almost like my personal support dating coach.
This
right?
is your wingman. It should
Yeah,
be
this is-
Wingman AI.
This is like a wingman AI, honestly. All right. So here's what it said. "It's best to give the other person some time to respond, especially if they haven't been online recently. Sending another message too soon might come across as pushy or desperate. I recommend waiting a day or two to see if she responds. If you don't hear back after a few days, you can send another follow-up message to check in and see how she's doing. But in general, it's important to be patient and respectful of other person time and schedule. Good luck."
That's good.
Isn't that crazy? Now, this what's funny is it's acknowledging the bullshit that we do deal with online dating, that like legit, you just have to be very patient with online dating. And if someone doesn't respond for a day or two, that is just how it works. I mean, it's funny that has become the model nowadays for effective dating, but that is the model. All right. So I said, "Okay, I'll play it cool for now, but what if she does write back? How long should I wait to respond?" Because again, like when someone writes back and they took a day to do it, do you want to immediately respond? Like there's all these dynamics that are very nuanced within dating culture that I'm really curious to see if it picks up on. And here's what it says. "When it comes to responding to messages on dating apps, there isn't a hard and fast rule on how long you should wait. However, it's generally a good idea to respond within a reasonable amount of time, such as a few hours of the day. If you're interested in continuing the conversation, you can reply as soon as you have a chance. Don't wait too long, or the other person might lose interest or think that you're not interested in talking. On the other hand, if you're busy or not in the mood to chat, it's perfectly fine to take a bit longer to respond. Just make sure to communicate your intentions and be respectful of the other person's time. Ultimately, it's important to find a balance between being responsive and respectful of the boundaries.
More good learnings. Lessons. Learnings.
It also seems to acknowledge the kind of bullshit that we are dealing with every time we go into these kind of like situations, right? Where like there's really no hard and fast rule on this. It's really about like it's kind of just explaining the fact that you're gonna put up with some bullshit here. Okay, so I asked, should I keep swiping for new matches while waiting for her to respond? And it's like, yeah, totally perfectly fine to keep swiping, looking for new matches while you wait for her to respond. Dating apps are designed for meeting new people. So it's natural to keep exploring your options. Just keep in mind that it's important to be respectful and honest with the people you match with. And again, keeps on saying the same. So here's where you start to see repetition in AI.
Yeah.
Okay. There is actually a lot of stuff that keeps getting repeated as you dig into it and keep going. So it's not really like original. It's not quite the same, but it's going to keep giving you the same advice is what I noticed. However, if you start having meaningful conversation with someone, it's generally a good idea to focus on that conversation rather than juggling multiple conversations at once. Overall, it's important to prioritize honesty and communication. Again, it keeps going back to those things, which is great. It's important to be honest and communicate every time. Did I go further?
Of course you did.
Of course I did. Well, when should I stop swiping on meeting new girls? Is what I asked. This is an ethical quandary, right? I'm curious to see how it actually goes through. The decision of when to stop swiping on meeting new girls ultimately depends on your own personal goals and preferences. If you're looking for a serious relationship, you may want to take your time and focus on getting to know a few people in depth before deciding to stop swiping.
Yes.
On the other hand, if you're just looking to have fun and explore options, you may choose to keep swiping and meeting new people until you find someone you really connect with, regardless of your intentions. It's important to be honest and clear with the people you match with. Again, so it goes back to the same stuff of honesty. Communicate your intentions. If you're not interested in pursuing, it's important to communicate that. It says the same stuff again. Find a balance between being open to new possibilities and respectful of the people you're interacting with. So it is like balancing that and keeps giving the same advice. Here's my next question. Should I pay for the first date?
Oh my God. What did it say?
Isn't this, it's interesting, right? I want to know. How does AI respond to these common situations, common issues, right? Well, when it comes to paying for the first date, there are different opinions and cultural norms in different parts of the world. In general, though, it's a good idea to offer to pay for the first date as a way of showing your interest and respect for the other person. However, it's important to be mindful of the other person's preferences and to be flexible based on the situation. If your date insists on splitting the bill or paying for themselves, it's important to respect their wishes and not push the issue. It's also worth noting that in some cases, paying for the first date can be a way of asserting dominance or control, which can be a red flag. If you're concerned about this, you may want to have an open and honest conversation with your date about the expectations and intentions. Ultimately, the most important thing is to be respectful and considerate of the other person's feelings and preferences and to find a way of splitting the bill that works for both of you.
That is oh my God, hold on. That is so interesting that it picked up on that nuance of the assertion of power and dominance, because that is something that I didn't learn until like well into my adulthood regarding, okay, you can pay, but there's something that'll very often make women uncomfortable.
Well,
and it knew that.
And I'll say this is that I think if you're a guy, you should probably pay. Especially, I think the person who is asking for the date should probably pay or offer to pay, be ready to pay. That's the thing. Usually that's the guy. So generally that will be the guy who should be paying. Now, are there women that I have gone on dates with before that were uncomfortable with me paying for it? Yes. And you need to be able to pick up on that while you're with them. And when it comes to that check dance at the end of like, oh, I'll just pay, you should, all right, I'll just pay. But if they're like, no, let's split it, you don't fight the issue and you let them do that. Because yeah, some women don't want to have that reciprocation thing. That's actually a trigger in our minds, reciprocation. When somebody pays for something for someone else, it causes reciprocation in the mind. It's not something that you can choose or avoid. And many women, especially if they're not interested in you, or if after the date they're not looking to go further or elevate or escalate the date, they will go to the point of like, no, let's just split it so that there's none of that reciprocation happening in
Right.
the situation. And as a guy, you know, you should be able to pick up on that, and you should watch for that so that it becomes something. It was really interesting that the AI at least brings up that conversation. Here's so my next question
Oh, you
was,
kept going.
oh, I keep going, man. So what's the worst thing I could say to her that'll stop her interest? I want to avoid saying the wrong thing.
Hmm.
So I'm trying to position myself as someone who really doesn't know what they're doing, right? Which I think is a lot of guys sometimes. This is a great way to get better at it, maybe, you know?
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people who are, say, insecure, especially like if I had this when I was in high school, holy crap, would I be way better at this? Probably. I learned a lot of things through the school of hard knocks of being bad at it.
Right.
And these are things that I learned through the trial and error of like messing it up, screwing it up many times, and the navigation. Well, here's the AI who is like sort of compiling all these mistakes that people may have made and giving it to me. So it's important to be mindful. Here's what it says. It's important to be mindful of what you say to a potential partner, as some things can be off-putting or offensive. Here are some examples of things that might turn someone off. And it gives me 5 things. Making overly sexual comments or sending explicit photos without consent. No dick pics. Number 1 on the thing. Clearly, all right? Like,
Nice.
I love that it's just like, don't send dick pics, basically.
Nice.
Of course, right? Being disrespectful or dismissive of their opinions or interests.
Oh.
Makes total sense. Insulting or belittling them or their appearance.
Yeah.
Being too pushy or aggressive in your communication or behavior. Coming on too strong, too quickly, or expressing intense emotions before you've gotten to know each other. So, like going full boil. I don't know if you know what I mean by from Brooklyn Nine-Nine, but that's a reference.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So then it says to avoid saying the wrong thing, it's a good idea to be respectful and considerate in your communication. Of course, it keeps going back to that respectful and considerate. It keeps telling me to be respectful and considerate. You know, so here's what I asked. How do I show that I'm respectful and considerate?
Nice.
And so it goes into showing respect and consideration in your communication with a potential partner can take many forms, but here are some tips to get you started. Number 1, be genuine and authentic. Show your interest and enthusiasm for getting to know the other person, but be yourself and don't try to be someone you're not. Number 2, so I like that because here's the thing. This is like you could use AI as a psychopath to train yourself to act like other people. Which is
Yeah.
go with the whole Dexter thing, right? So
Right.
like if someone's narcissistic, sociopathic, but they know they are, could they learn methods through AI to portray? Because I didn't say how do I be respectful. I asked how do I show? And so I wanted to see how it is, and it actually and what I thought was interesting is be yourself and don't try to be someone you're not. So it's already acknowledging that, which is good.
Yep.
But it also isn't gonna. It's still gonna teach me. So next is listen actively. Take time to actively listen to what the other person is saying. Show that you're interested and engaged in the conversation by asking questions and offering your own thoughts and experiences.
Nice.
Number 3, be mindful of their boundaries. Respect the other person's boundaries and preferences and be careful not to push them into anything they're not comfortable with. Number 4, be polite and courteous. Use polite language and be courteous in your communication, showing kindness and consideration for the other person. Number 5, be patient and understanding. If the other person needs time to respond or if they have different opinions or experiences from your own, try seeing things from their perspective and be open to learning and growing from the experience. Overall, the key to showing respect and consideration is be mindful of the other person's feelings and needs and to communicate with them in an open and honest, empathetic way.
Oh, man.
It's impressive, right?
It's so impressive. I mean, this is the kind of thing that so many people, myself included, wish that we had someone to explain. Because there's so many nuances. You know, this is the Sesame Street for adults. Like Sesame Street does a great job of just like, well, this is what's okay to do. Ooh, and you should be considerate of the other person's feelings. You know, that's what Sesame Street taught us.
Yep.
And now we get Chat AI telling us how to be considerate and respectful of others.
Yeah. No, I didn't stop there. So I went back to opening lines. but I wanted to see if it could do something that I know is effective, which is humor. See, to me, the best opening lines on Tinder or Bumble or any of that stuff were things that elicited an emotional, fun, funny, laughing response. Put people on an emotional roller coaster where they're like, oh my gosh, that was crazy. And then they laugh because of something. So I have a few great opening lines that if you want to opt into our email list or send us an email asking for them, I can potentially show you what they are, because they are very effective and they're really good. But I don't just give them out. And I'm not using them anymore, by the way. So obviously,
Chris's school of Cupid.
If my partners listen, just don't, worry about that. I'm not using these. These are all from past effective things in the past. But here's what it said, okay? Here are some opening lines for Tinder that might make a girl laugh.
Okay.
Excuse me, do you have a map? I just got lost in your profile.
That's a little creepy, actually.
Well, maybe it's the
okay,
way I
no.
said it.
Okay, if it's, I was assuming that this is you walk up to somebody and
No.
you say that, and I'm
This is
like,
all
so
Tinder
you've been
opening lines.
creeping the person? Oh God, okay.
No.
But yeah, okay, if it's a Tinder profile and you're messaging them, that does make more sense. Okay.
All right. Are you a magician? Because whenever I look at your profile, everyone else disappears. These are I'm gonna warn you, they only get more cheesy.
Okay, here we go.
If you were a vegetable, you'd be a cucumber.
I would never call someone a vegetable. That's just no.
I must be a snowflake because I've fallen for your profile.
Okay, also just pop culturally, calling yourself a snowflake, not a great idea.
Yeah. These are like, I gotta say this, that when I started to plug in, make something funny, this is where AI started to, in my opinion, break down. It's
Misses
not
the nuance.
Yeah, it doesn't really get humor yet. It understands puns because puns are very technical humor, right? And it's written humor, which is very easy to spot. Like, oh, this is a homonym, and boom, I can plug that in. Homonyms are funny to humans. Like, it's sort of that way, right? So here's a few other ones. Are you a bank loan? Because you have my interest.
Okay, that's actually not bad. It is a bit cold, but it's not bad.
Yes. Are you a parking ticket? Because you've got fine written all over you.
Ooh, that is good. I would almost use that.
Hey, Chris coming at you. We will get back to the episode in just a second, but first I wanted to let you know about an upcoming guest we have on our podcast, Hope Christofferson. She's a professional artist with more than 100,000 followers on Instagram. She sold thousands of dollars of her art on Etsy and at music festivals. She describes her art as mythological field notes. So picture what an old Darwinian biologist in the wild studying unicorns and dragons would have written, and you get the idea. You can check her work out on Insta at Hope Christofferson. We're interviewing her in the next week or so. So send us an email at nerds@nerdpreneurpodcast if you have any questions that you want us to ask. You can also send us a DM over Insta or Twitter at nerdpreneurpod. Now back to the AI pickup lines. If you were a fruit, you'd be a fine apple. It replicated to fine apple. Not a pineapple, a fine apple.
Oh, went over my head.
Yeah.
It's that good.
Do you believe in love at first swipe, or do I need to unmatch and swipe right again?
No. No.
If you were a triangle, you'd be a cute one.
Oh, okay. I like it.
For the math
geometry.
nerds.
Nice.
That's the nerdiest of the pickup lines. Excuse me, but I think you dropped something. My jaw.
Okay.
So, and then again, it reminds me it's important to be respectful and considerate in your communication. So it's always going back to, again, that same advice, which is good. I mean, again, I think it's like that catch-all of like, we told them to be respectful and considerate. So don't blame me that this girl's accusing you of being not.
You know, this is really interesting because it does make me wonder about the central consciousness of this chatbot AI. Like, I'm assuming here that there is some central consciousness, hub at OpenAI. I forget the parent company's name. It might actually be OpenAI. Yeah, it is. OpenAI has like a central consciousness, or Is it that they've got several different sectors of it that do different things or just have different personalities? So you'll get different variations of advice. So you might get, Wingman Chad. Sorry, Chads out there that listen to us. Or you might get Wingman, like good guy over here. So what is it that's like? I wonder where the differentiation comes from. And maybe you can say, hey, I want to talk to AI Chad instead, to get your advice. Different personalities for different cultures, different subcultures.
Yeah, that's true. So it's like I'd be curious to be like if people could say extrapolate this chat bot into more of a that doesn't have those say explicit restrictions on it, right? Like
Right.
could you, because there is that toxic side of the pickup culture where there are people who are training people on how to use certain phrases and nuances in language to move girls down a line towards a objective of, say, hookup culture, right? And there are people who train on that. I haven't done any of those kind of courses, and I think that's kind of shitty.
And to be clear, like, we're not condoning that, like, at all. It's just like the different preference of a customer,
Yeah, and exactly. And so there is a market for that out there. And so I'm curious, like, will there be a chatbot that eventually gets targeted, like player chatbot, right? Like it's like that kind of thing, targeted directly at men to be able to coach them through all of these conversations. And I don't know if you ever saw that. Okay, did you ever see the Black Mirror, which was literally about this, where people go on a date, but they have an entire team behind them in their ear talking to them about how to engage in that date and say certain. Oh, it was fascinating because that's what I was curious about. I don't know what episode it is, but it's one of the that's like second or third season of Black Mirror, maybe. And it is all about dating, and like you see this guy going on a date, and then all of a sudden you are like drawn out of the date and into like his entire team of people. There's like 4 or 5 other guys who are like on the line, and it's like a committee of people who are reading the situation, giving him coaching live in time with the date to make this date be as effective and awesome as possible. And then you go to the girl, and guess what? The girl has the exact same thing on her side. And so now there's like an entire committee of people trying to make these dates be an incredible experience for those people. So, I mean, this is the next level. Now, does that make sense for it to be 5 different people? Or in the future, will it just be an AI bot that's there giving you advice in it? Because an AI bot could easily replicate and read the situation better than 5 people could.
Faster, too.
They already know AI can read your pupil dilation. They can read the facial expressions and nuances better than humans can, and spot internal emotions. So there's an entire concern around influence of AI, because AI will influence you. And there is an incredibly powerful nature towards AI being able to influence us. And we don't even know the impact of what that could be.
No, kidding. I mean, this just goes back to that point earlier about the impact AI is going to have and how we've got to just be mindful of it. But if there are these kind of parameters in the algorithm to make sure that morality, like good ethics, are instilled and the advice is given that way, I think that is a promising future going forward, because this is a classic example of technology outpacing regulation. And technology, I mean, what was the one?
Wild West right now, man. It is the Wild West of AI.
Absolutely. And it has been. I mean, it was the same with like cryptocurrency. Well outpaced regulation. Regulation had no idea what to do with that. What are those? Blockchain. They had no idea what to do with blockchain technology. And now we're seeing that with AI even more, even though AI has been around like in a big way in Japan since like at least I was doing some research on their virtual tuber celebrities, at least since 2016, when they had their first big AI celebrity who's also a musician. And that was at a time of virtual reality as well. And that blew up I don't need to go into a total tangent there, but it's crazy that this is going to be impacting us in these ways as well.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I really went on a deep dive with like the dating thing, and this could be an entire episode just on dating tips from AI.
I think it is right now.
But let me give you a couple other things I asked. So how do I know when a girl wants to kiss?
Ooh.
Because that's
Okay.
another, isn't it? Like I went through, all right, what are all the challenges that I know I experienced as a man growing up? The things where I'm like, I don't understand what's going on. Help
Right.
me, and you learn through experience and obviously messing things up. And it's also, I think, where a lot of people do, through social nuance, learn these skills. And sometimes there's harm that's caused out of these learning experiences, and sometimes people, they make mistakes and come back and all these sort of things. But I thought, what would an AI do to coach you through a situation like that or prep you for a situation like that? So it's not always easy to tell when someone wants to kiss you, as everyone has their own personal boundaries and comfort levels. However, here are some signs that she may be interested in kissing you. One, she leans in closer to you and makes prolonged eye contact. She
Mm.
she touches or plays with her hair while talking to you. Three, she tilts her head or looks at your lips. I think that one's very subtle.
That is so true, though, from my personal experience. There's always, whenever there's a look at the lips, it's like, okay.
She seems to be lingering in your personal space or getting physically closer to you.
Mhm.
She mirrors your body language, such as leaning in or tilting her head when you do. She lingers at the end of the date or the conversation, looking like she doesn't want it to end. She gives you compliments or flirts with you. Of course, the best way to know if she wants to kiss you is to ask her directly, especially if you're not sure. Remember, communication is key in any relationship, so it's important to be, let me guess, respectful and consider
Considerate.
again, like it gives us all of
Nice.
this, right? If you're both interested, it could be a great opportunity to connect and share a special moment together.
Mm,
Oh,
that's
AI is
good.
romantic, right? It's kind of romantic.
Wow. Well, it's true. There is a formula to first dates, and it's just goes to show that the machine learning here is picked up on it. That's pretty crazy.
Pretty crazy,
Wow.
eh? Like there was a lot of stuff that I went through in this with this, right? Like so I also asked, should I break up with a girlfriend? Like how do I know when I should break up with someone?
Whoa. Total 180 here.
Yeah,
Okay.
totally. Because I want to, because it complicated stuff on the beginning, but then what also complicated stuff at the end.
Mm-hmm.
So here's what it said. It's not appropriate for me to give personal advice on relationship matters. Breaking up with someone is a very personal decision that should be considered carefully. It can be difficult and emotional process, and it's important to consider the feelings and needs of both parties involved. If you're unsure about whether or not to break up with someone, it might be helpful to consider talking to a trusted friend, family member, or professional therapist for guidance and support. They can provide different perspective and help you think through your options and the potential consequences of your decision. Ultimately, the most important thing is to do what is best for you and communicate openly and honestly with your partner about your feelings and concerns.
Man, that is the same messaging my own therapists have given in the past about like make sure that you stay in touch with what your feelings are and what your needs are. Like, and that is for some people really hard to recognize. This is great because it not only suggests that you rely on and reach out to your community, but also therapists.
Yeah.
That
But
is
I'm all, but
that's great.
here's what I'm finding interesting though is like because all right, when things are difficult at the beginning, it gives us some good advice and it helps us do that. So yeah, maybe if you're currently a pickup artist or a dating coach or one of those people who coaches on it, you might get a little bit of competition from this free AI bot that I spent literally an hour, maybe less, doing this research and got an incredible amount of valuable and useful information if I were new to dating or if I was just inept at it.
Right.
Now, again, everything is execution anyways. Knowing is not enough. You have to do, as Bruce Lee always said, right? So it's important to actually implement and practice and all those sort of things. Just because it says act confident doesn't mean you can feel confident and be confident in the real world.
Sure.
So knowledge is power, but execution of knowledge is actually power. So keeping that in mind, that I think there's still probably real places for people to have real people wingmen, or wing women or something like that, where you can actually go and practice this stuff and get used to it. But then in the difficult side of it as well, I think that there is a real opportunity for there to be therapy for free using AI. You know,
Whoa.
there's actually, I think, a real power and safety net because you're not communicating with a real person, you're communicating with an AI. And in some ways, it is directing me towards talking to a real person. But as a first step, could AI be helpful for people who are suffering and unwilling to take that step outside to talk to someone? And I'm curious about the impact there too, because as I started talking about the breakup thing and like where that can go, right? It was just interesting to hear that it was recommending me to outside sources to talk to real people, and that it doesn't want to take responsibility for ruining your life or potentially saving your life. It's an interesting dynamic that this initial Wild West of Chat GPT is.
I think that is a very fascinating what if in the future, whether we can rely on it for things like therapy and even like friendships and community. Because right now there's shortcomings, there's limitations of the AI. I mean, your scenario showed a couple of them, but I've also heard that AI struggles when you go on for a series of connected chains of questions.
Mhm.
So it starts to fall off. And like you said, it repeats itself, but also it doesn't grasp the nuance, which we talked about, but also it just starts to struggle in
Yeah.
general. And there was an article I read about that with Microsoft's project for Bing and how that really struggles. So they decided that they would cap it instead at 5 questions. But as far as like therapy, I think that while AI is learning very quickly, there are different schools of thought in different kinds of therapy. And I would be very curious and it seems very likely and possible that you could have an AI based on different kinds of trains of thought and philosophies around therapy, and that could be useful. But at the same time, I don't know. I think the human connection with a real person is super important.
I agree. I don't think that the be all end all of therapy is going to be a robot. I actually think that it might be a useful first step in people who are insecure or unable to talk to somebody in real life. Like people with heavy anxiety could be very anxious about sharing what their experience is with a real person, or even going into an office or talking with someone on a Zoom call or signing up for BetterHelp or any of those things that we see as resources. But the idea of like, I'm just going to talk to this bot and see what it tells me. I'm feeling really anxious, and I wonder, like, that might be might be another episode of ours. Is like, let's get mental health tips from a AI bot and see what happens, and see
Yeah.
whether or not it's actually useful. And because I haven't done that experiment yet. I staying on the dating thing because I didn't stop there. I have a little bit more because this is fascinating. I wanted to know like how deep can we go? So it's like there's the breakup stuff, there's the picking up people, right, or meeting people stuff that I talked
Mm-hmm.
about. Now we're talking about love.
Mm-hmm.
How do you know if you love someone, AI bot? So here's what I asked is how do you know if you love someone? And it's like there are many ways to determine if you love someone. Here are a few signs you may be in love. This is coming from a machine.
Right.
Let's keep this in mind. This is from a machine about something called love. It does not experience love. It is pulling this information out of wherever it gets it. So you think about them often and miss them when they're not around. Number 1. Number 2, you feel a strong emotional connection to them and care about their well-being. 3, you want to spend quality time with them and prioritize your relationship with them. You are supportive and understanding of them and are willing to compromise and make sacrifices for them. You feel happy and fulfilled when you're with them, and your relationship brings joy and positivity for your life. It's important to note that love can manifest itself in different ways and can look and feel different for different people. Ultimately, only you can determine if you truly love someone. If you're unsure, it might be helpful to spend some time reflecting on your feelings and considering what is most important to you in a relationship.
Interesting. As someone who has been in love multiple times, I'm not so sure. Those sound an awful lot like infatuation. They sound an awful lot like the excitement that you get when you first really connect with someone. I wouldn't describe those all as love, but like you said, this is a machine.
Yeah, exactly. So I just think that right now I was impressed overall. That's about as far as I went with all the dating and love tips and everything, which I felt was pretty deep.
Yeah.
I went really hard into that because I thought it was fascinating and interesting. And I thought, it's also something that when you consider the one thing that we as humans should be experts in, right? Which is relationships and emotions, because that's the unique thing that humanity and our brains really create. And the thing that AI truly does not experience, does not have, or really have an insight, or should not have an insight on. I thought we got some amazingly impressive answers out of a machine itself, which is just really scraping or pulling data to be able to craft answers based on the questions. Now, again, the inputs I put in, I think that AI is very much like garbage in, garbage out. Like you have to really be smart about what questions you ask. And it took me a few different tries to get to the responses that I wanted. But it is something that, like, with the skill sets of doing these questions, and it is a skill set, I think, of asking the right questions to get AI to get you the answers that are going to be effective. It actually can really be a great tool for people who are in those situations. And maybe better than, say, Googling what are 10 great Tinder pickup lines, right? Because you're just looking to get the SEO is not necessarily the best answer. Whereas
Right.
I think Chat GPT, and whatever algorithm it's using to create the answers, seems to be finding pretty effective and solid answers for you.
Yeah, I actually this whole conversation and all of these things that you've thrown out there has really started to tweak a early fear of mine around this since doing this research, which is that those with less integrity will succeed because and that comes from the idea that they will profit and benefit from the use of free or cheap tools like these AIs, for writing their essays, for getting art done, for making decisions that would normally you'd have to go through a professional or someone else who has made it their career to provide these answers. And so people are going to benefit and do the least amount of work to get really far. And that is scary because then we're going to get this dystopian future where you've got all these corrupted people at the top who can't do shit. They're totally inept. They're totally not capable of doing the position that they have, but they rely on AI. And then you're going to have all these people with integrity who can't make it because they're just too slow, because they're actually using their brains. And the only way to succeed is to use these cheap, fast tools. But what this conversation has highlighted is how actually, if you put in some morality parameters, you could actually instill some good values in
Mhm.
people. And that is a nice glimmer of hope for me.
I have something very related to this exact integrity question, because I said I was done, but I'm not done. I asked one more question I forgot that I asked. And it's
Oh.
exactly on this integrity question. Should I tell her I'm talking this through with an AI? Because I want to know, is the AI gonna is the AI going to encourage me to be in integrity, or is it going to encourage me to keep it hidden,
and what is its awareness of self?
Yes, exactly, right? So here's the answer, and maybe we'll finish on this, but that's ultimately up to you, exclamation point. If you feel comfortable sharing that you're getting advice from an AI, you can certainly let her know. It's possible she might find it interesting or even humorous, but it's also possible that she might have concerns or reservations. In general, it's always a good idea to be honest and transparent in your communication, but you should also use your judgment and consider how the other person might react. If you're unsure, it might be best to hold off on mentioning the AI and focus on building a connection with the other person based on shared interests and values.
Nice.
I mean,
Wow.
I think that's very well put and very well nuanced in terms of what you should do. But it definitely, I think, leaves you in the impression. And again, this is sort of the subtle manipulation of the AI and manipulating you towards an answer. It's positioning the answer at the end to be like, probably don't want to say that. No, like it's kind of saying that in a nice way
Yeah.
while also acknowledging it's important to be honest. Don't lie. Don't spend your time lying. But you probably don't want to say you're a loser getting answers from an AI to talk to girls. Like it just feels not in alignment with being the cool guy, and the AI seems to know that.
Yeah. And it seems to, yeah, it understands the nuance of the culture around it and using it at this time, which may change in 10 years. It might become the norm. And that's kind of the takeaway for me from the other takeaway for me from this conversation is that this is not a replacement tool. This is not your Wingman AI that you should rely on, but
Mhm.
it is one that you could add to your community. And I say that with reservation because very often when people are doing online dating and whatnot, they will consult their friends at times and say, hey, this happened. What should I do? And we would ask multiple people maybe. And then you could include this chat AI, Wingman AI, as I'm calling it now. You can add it to your circle of advisors.
Mhm.
And
Exactly.
that's so interesting. Wow, I'm so glad you took this deep dive, Chris. Man, that is
This
fascinating.
Yeah, it becomes part of your board of directors, right? Like
Yes.
of people or things that can be in aid to any objective that you want. And I guess, I wanted to start with dating, and I think we could do a series of these. I'll
Yeah.
let you know, here's a few other things that I did experiments with on this. One was I wanted to see how quickly could I use this to craft story, and I specifically wrote a children's story in about under an hour that I thought was kind of good.
Oh, yeah.
So I might put that together, and consequently, also, could I write a children's story in under an hour using AI, and then use AI art to illustrate it? I haven't done the art side of it yet, but I think that that's a possibility. And then from there, could I sell that on Amazon?
That'll be an interesting conversation because there is a comic or a graphic novel that was written. The story was written by a person, and then the art was done completely by AI for this graphic novel, and it got published.
Mm-hmm.
And now the publication is being reviewed because of the implication. But we can talk more about that later on
Yeah.
the next time that we talk
Well,
about AI.
I also went through and had it. Where could we use this for Dungeons and Dragons and creating artificial? Because everyone got up in arms about artificial intelligent DMs, and I don't. And here's what I think. I think people don't realize how effective an AI dungeon master could be. And I think that people will wind up actually liking it a lot more than they expect, even though dungeon masters want to be running games and doing
Yeah.
that.
I
And
mean,
also,
think about
where could it help you in aid of your planning, creating stories, creating nuances, creating magic items, creating monsters, creating unique stat blocks or NPCs? I went through a deep dive on that as well, and maybe we'll do a dedicated episode on how you could use that.
Oh, yeah.
I also did a deep dive on how it could be used to improve productivity overall in your life. And,
Ooh.
so specifically around, just specifically around business uses, how to create more efficient schedules, how to go into creative blog posts or topics of discussion, how we could use this ourselves in Nerdpreneur to help grow our business and impact our overall bottom line. So all of these things are things that I've had a chance to start digging in with, and I want to continue doing with these AI. Maybe we'll do like some regular AI monthly posts on it, because I don't think this is going away. And I think that if we continue to utilize this stuff and we continue to talk through and find interesting ways in which people can utilize it, people are going to tune in and want to know more.
Yeah. I love it. I love the idea. Wow.
So,
AI. It ain't
so
going anywhere.
yeah, and I also think we should talk about the fears and the detriment and the dangerousness of it too, because there is no shortage of that online as well. And I haven't done a huge deep dive on it, but I did start polling people in our community around what their fears were. And I found somebody who is in the artist community, like the impact on artists that have real fears of art. And I also talked to people who are now using AI art and have a business around crafting AI art for people in the D&D community. So
What?
I talked with her, and maybe we'll get her on the podcast to talk. She sent me a voice clip about what it means to her, because she's not a real artist. And she's like, what? I shouldn't say that. Okay. She's not a professionally trained physical artist, but she's really, really good at getting the AI to craft the images that the person actually wants. And she'll spend an hour of time with somebody and charge for the time. And then everybody, and the person who gets in the person she's working with for that hour gets every image that they generate during that hour. And they can be able to use it for their D&D campaigns or for their, whatever else they want to do. And she's been slowly going through the monster manual and using her skill sets to craft really unique and cool images of monsters that you can then use. So, for example, like a gelatinous cube or a beholder or any of that kind of thing, she's creating those types of images for people to use, and it's alternatives to what's already in the monster manual, facilitating imagination. So I'm just saying there is huge amounts of opportunity, and I'm saying we've got more to go on with this. This is why I'm like, let's focus on one thing right now, dating tips from an AI, because that's kind of cool, but like, there is more. Tune in, hit subscribe. Email us at Nerdpreneur Podcast with your questions and concerns and what you want to see us talk about. And if you get some really cool responses from your AI experimentation with Chat GPT, send it to us. We'd love to discuss it on our next AI Talking Nerdy.
And as always, keep it nerdy. Hey there, Frank and Chris here. We just wanted to thank everybody.
Thank you. You guys are awesome. Totally epic.
Absolutely amazing that you all are supporting us, and we can't thank you enough. So here,
Well, I can. Frank can't.
I can't thank you enough. Chris is able to thank you.
I'm going to thank you guys so freaking hard every single episode for the rest of your goddamn lives if you're supporting us through this podcast.
Chris does thank really hard.
And if that's not enough for you,
then you've got me who can't thank you enough.
thanks again.
Thank you.